The Ballarat Bullet. What an unkind text was read out there about champion, but he is a champion bloke, and he's been a marathon champion. City to Surf, he owns it. Still holds the race record. And I will say on the record, the blow smoke up, as you know, where in introducing Steve, I've worked with a lot of people over a lot of years. Greg Alexander's one of the best. Steve Moneghetti, none better than him to work with as a professional, knowing his subject, but good fun as well. And I'm pretty sure that's going to come through in the interview. Steve, welcome to Breakfast with Vossy and Brandy.
Wow, what an intro. Gee, I'm under pressure now, aren't I? Thanks, Vossy. Yeah. Lovely to hear your dulcet tones again. And Brandy, terrific to be along and look forward to having a chat.
Yeah. Now, we want you, we know you're going to embarrass us. So I asked Brandy earlier today. Brandy was an elite sports person. Do you do any running since you retired? And Brandy's answer was, well, no, he doesn't. He just gave up. Me, I go by the creed, no pain, no pain. But I've seen you firsthand, Steve, and you have a spare hour before a flight. What do? You don't sit back and have a glass of wine, a Mexican wine. You put on the running shoes and you go for a run. How much are you running still today, Steve?
Well, to be honest, I'm not running at all. So we're equal today. I've got a sore calf. So I've got, what is it? Apparently I've got old man's calf. But I didn't think I am a man. I didn't think I was old. So I'm not sure how that's working. But apparently I've got old man's calf. I know I'm having a bit of trouble just getting rid of that. But if I was running, I'd be running about, getting out and running about 70K a week. So about 10K a day.
10K. Oh, okay. So it's the calf. 10K. And there's an epidemic of calves throughout our sport, rugby league at the moment, Steve. So now, do you run competitively anymore? Like, do you actually get your line up? Yep.
Absolutely. That's why I tore my calf, because I didn't have a very good race about a month ago, and I got a bit angry and did a few sessions during the week. In fact, I did 4 sessions in 1 week, and by the Saturday morning, on the 4th one, halfway through, my calf went, and that's what you get. So the mind is willing, but the body isn't at 61 years of age, so I learnt my lesson.
All right, 62 this year. Now, someone did text in about the Moneghetti session. You've just used the word session. So what is a session, and how would someone talk about, they said in preparing for Ironman, do the Moneghetti session, and it makes you throw up. So what's a session for you, Steve, of training? Is it just running?
So I think they might be talking about a particular session that's become a bit sort of infamous now. So I call it my fartlek or normal fartlek, but a lot of people call it mono fartlek because it's named after me. So it's a session I used to do every Tuesday night around Lake Wendouree, and it was an integral part of my training. So like sprinting and jogging, so I do a 20-minute session, 2 by 90 seconds, 4 by 1 minute, 4 by 30 seconds, 4 by 15 seconds, and I'd have the same recovery. And that was a 20-minute session that's now done all around the world to just keep the speed in your legs. So, and in that, you might talk about the City to Surf record, but in Ballarat I hold the Lapper Lake record, and that's 16:10 for 6K around Lake Wendouree. And in that running session, I've actually run 17:18 for the session, which is about 250K pace average. So I'm not sure how fast I was going in the ons or the hard bits, but I was obviously going pretty fast in the recoveries because you can't run that fast otherwise.
Well, we've had people text in where they love running. The Bay Run around Five Dock area, Newcastle Beach. Vossy said, I'm sure Monas has done the Newcastle Beach to Merriweather Run, Narrabeen Lakes, the Penrith River, the Nepean River, so around the river run around Penrith, the Wollongong Harbour Run. Steve, have you got a favourite? And I guess I'm talking about the scenery and the run included. Where would you, if you picked a place in the world, where would it be to run?
Well, our favourite is in Portland, Oregon, up on just above Nike headquarters in the forest there. It's called Forest Park, and there's a trail there that's just the Wildwood Trail that's just beautiful. But we've got some fantastic places here in Australia. I think that's one thing. We value our open space, and you talk about Centennial Park in Sydney, that run up at Newcastle. I certainly have been down to Merriwater and then into the national park over the back there, and there's just and it gives me an opportunity. We're all busy, and I think the world's really busy now. It gives me an opportunity to get out and just have some some thinking time, some solo time, and then sometimes just enjoying the environment. I love getting into the space of a forest where you are just at one with the environment. And I know that sounds a bit philosophical, but we don't appreciate how nice it is just to be able to get out and enjoy the outdoors here in our country. And, if people can get out and do that today in a safe way, in a safe environment, but to do that is a pretty special thing. And I love racing, but you know what I love more, boys? Just getting out and going for a run and that feeling of just being at peace with yourself, being able to get that sort of mental clarity and just feeling like you're actually sort of, you've got your breathing in control and you're running in rhythm in the forest. It's just a really powerful feeling, something I really enjoy. And I still get to do now. I'm lucky my body's still in pretty good nick that I can do that. Apart from the odd sort of overuse injury, I'm still getting out most days to be able to enjoy that.
Steve, so whenever you run, and you just said clarity, when you're running, it's just good to get out. You're not a music podcast listener, are you? When you're running, you got the headphones on ever?
No, I love my music, and I've seen more bands than I've gone for runs in the last couple of weeks. But I don't. I choose to. What do I tell a little? I tell a bit of a joke. When I'm talking, I say, "Oh yeah, I love running with music," and I go, Simon and Garfunkel. That's my favourite. And I'm leading him into this story. And my favourite song, Simon and Garfunkel, is "Sounds of Silence." Sounds of silence in the forest. They get there eventually. It's a long story.
Yes.
I'm a marathon runner.
Very good. Now, these people who don't know you, Steve, they're listening here, say, gee, he's running. But let's go right back. Because this is Throwback Thursday, I've got to touch on your life story. The fact is, as a kid, like primary school, you are not a good runner. Is it right, as the story goes, your father tried to enter you in little athletics and you were rejected? You weren't wanted. You were no good. They knocked you back. Is that true?
Oh yeah, that's true. And it wasn't their fault. You got to think about distance running, and I love my athletics, and it's a great sport. But athletics is a very varied sport. There is an event in athletics for everybody, and that's what I love about it. It's such an inclusive sport. But when you think about, I seriously was. I'm not the biggest bloke now, but I was a little kid at school, and when I went to Little Athletics, I've got no fast twitch fibers. That's why I'm a distance runner. And Little A's, you do a couple of laps at the end, and I was okay at that. But I couldn't sprint, I couldn't throw an implement, and I couldn't jump because I had no vertical leap. Well, that really rounds you out. There's not too much left at Little Athletics. So the person wasn't wrong. I just didn't have the distance running event there to sort of excel, and wasn't until, and you don't do a lot of distance running, 800 metres is a long way when you're a kid. And as sort of I got older and the distances got further, and I say this quite genuinely, I wasn't that talented as a distance runner. And what happened was I'd have 5, but you guys would be ahead of me, in the 800, and then we get to 1500 and only you'd be ahead of me, Vossy. And then luckily, we did have this lake in Ballarat called Lake Wendouree with 6K around, and once you got halfway, wasn't any point turning around and coming back, so you just finished it, and I found myself up the front. So I was just good at running for a long time.
There we go. Run, Forrest, run. You were like the Forrest Gump.
Exactly.
What about this one? Steve, you come on our program, you throw yourself at the mercy of the listener, the text. This one... Can you ask Steve about the time you raced a train from Stanmore Station to Summer Hill Station? You racing trains, Steve. Is that true?
I did. It's true. And I tell you, it was tight. I had to, because, obviously the moral of the story was I was going to beat the train. So I remember running, and I'm getting, and I could hear the toot every time we go through a station. The train was actually ahead of me. I'm thinking, geez, this is going to be tight. I remember running into the final station, and it was like a dead heat. I still don't know to this day whether I beat the train or not, but it was bloody tough, and I was running hard. Let me tell you, it was like a race. I'm a very competitive person. I wasn't giving up unless I beat that train. But I reckon the train might have won, but we're not going to admit it, are we?
No.
Steve, John says, can you ask Steve his weight now and his weight at his peak of running?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've really ballooned out. I used to run at 60 kilos, and I'm now 61. So I've got to take a good hard look at myself.
Great answer.
You've let yourself go.
Yeah,
terrible.
Well, yeah.
I have let myself go.
Steve,
Nice
we talk about like back in my day, the 80s, road running was a big thing for football training. It no longer is, but they talk about the joints of players now that did all that road running back in the 80s, and their knees are gone. And have you ever had that overuse of with the joints, the knees and the ankles, because you're on the road so often?
Oh, not so bad. And, as I say, I'm still running daily now when my body allows me to. But I did have a couple of Achilles ops. So I'm not sure people realise, but my final race at Sydney Olympics, I had some Achilles issues leading in from Com Games in 98. And I was wearing heel raisers, and they were so big. And if no one will see them, I've still got the shoes, but the heel raisers were so big, my foot was falling out the back of my Nike runners. So I had to take them to a bootmaker in Ballarat and insert the heel raise. So I had 23 mil heel raise on the day I ran that marathon at the Sydney Olympics. And so I was almost in stilettos. No wonder I was, I probably looked like I was leaning forward, because I was. And I was up in Sydney a couple of weeks ago for Com Games, AGM, and I was out at Olympic Park and saw a little bit of the blue line. Gee, it's great to just think back to that time in Sydney when we had the Olympics. And I know the world's moved on, but gee, it was just a fantastic time for Australia. And for me to think, I was running up Olympic Boulevard and turning around and entering that magnificent stadium. And, prior to the closing ceremony, there was a massive crowd there. And it was just a fantastic time for Australian sport.
That's a great point about the blue line, Brandy. When you see it, like even along Victoria Road, it's not all the way, but you get a little glimpse of it here and there.
Yeah.
It's almost like it should be. It should be preserved, shouldn't it? The blue line that was there for the marathon.
Well, it's still Now you mentioned Nike, so Nike
and
has been your.
We're sort of. Sorry, we're trying to keep it going. We've got the Sydney Marathon, which hopefully will become a world marathon major, and it started as a result of post the Olympic Games. So it's great to see so many people out enjoying running now, and they get an opportunity to do that at events like the Sydney Marathon, and it's just becoming. I used to remember when people used to talk to me. And you guys have sort of spoken about it, Vossy and Brandy, about me being a bit crazy. Now people just love getting out running, and I go to people now and they go, "Oh, we thought you were crazy. You're just normal. We love what you do, and we're all doing it now." And I ran 20 marathons last year, and I kind of go, "Wow, isn't this just terrific that people have seen the benefits of running and can get out and enjoy the sport that I've been able to love all my life."
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people are starting, and even in their 40s, Steve, they're starting to run and then increase the distance until they are running marathons. I had a mate that, and now he's competing in those world marathons. He fly to New York, go to Chicago, go to London. So Sydney hasn't been included on that world stage, has it? We're not there yet?
Not yet. We're close, and we're hoping if a good event this year in September, and we're sold out in the marathon. It's going really well, and hopefully then we tick the box and we can become a world marathon major in 2025. And how great would that be for marathon running in this country, having been the seventh, 8th or 9th of the world marathon majors after the top 6.
Yeah. So your first marathon, so just for the record, was it 1986? Is that the first time you ever run a competitive marathon? Obviously you trained for it, but actually ran in a race. And then if you were to say, if I put the cue on the rack today, how many marathons have you run in your life? We're going over.
Yeah, that's a good question.
If 86 the first, that's 38 years. How many marathons in 38 years?
So that was at the Com Games. So I had the opportunity. I ran the 10K on the Saturday night, and then 6 days later, I turned up to run the marathon. And I hadn't covered the distance. I'd just increased my training a little bit, but I was mainly a 10K runner. And fortunately, I had a good race and got onto the podium. Deek won. Rob De Castella won the race. Lisa Ondieki won the women's event, and I was third in the men's race. So that was my first time out, and then that sort of started my marathon career. And I've run 22 marathons in my career because they're all international events, and then I retired at the Sydney Olympics, and I have run lots of marathons since, but Great Ocean Road, Sydney Marathon a few times, Port Douglas ran a few marathons up there, but I don't count them. I just say they're long runs because my career was, as a marathon runner, was when I pulled on that Australian singlet. I loved representing my country, and I think that's when, I call myself a marathon runner. And they were the 22 marathons I ran, rather city marathons like London, Berlin, Tokyo, and then those other times I got to represent my country. And so that's my career. I say they were the number of marathons I did in my career was 22, and the rest of them I just call long runs because they were something that I did by choice and sometimes not flat out, just helping people, maybe, helping you, Vossy, get across the line in a race is something that I've been able to give back to the sport, which has been terrific. That'd be an effort, wouldn't it? Getting Vossy across the line in a marathon. My shoulders would be sore from piggybacking you.
Yep.
I didn't know you drove Ubers, Steve. I didn't know you drove Ubers, but anyway.
Yeah, I do remember dragging Daryl Broman across the finish line in a 2.5K time trial. Daryl had to run under 8 minutes, otherwise Tim Sheens wasn't going to pick him in first grade. And I remember dragging Daryl across the line just so he could play first grade. Ask Mona about the new shoes and the help in running performances and times. You mentioned Nike, and we've spoken about this previously about some of the marathon world records being broken and the mention of shoes that actually help you run faster. Is that true?
Do you have a favourite?
Yeah, super shoes. They're called, at the moment we call them super shoes, and all shoe companies have them now. And they've just revolutionised running. I remember when Nike sent me the first pair, I was about to go up to the Gold Coast, and I always weigh my shoes, and I used to have racing shoes because I wanted to race as fast as I possibly could. So I'd train in a heavier shoe, and then I'd have these racing flats that weighed almost nothing, and they'll wafer thin, and I'd put them on, and away I'd go. And obviously after the racing, I couldn't walk because my legs were smashed because I didn't have any sort of protection. But I ran really fast because I had light shoes, and they allowed me to perform at my best. Anyway, Nike sends me this pair of shoes. I weigh them, and they're heavier than my training shoes. I said, no, I'm not wearing these. These are like army boots. And they said, oh, no, we had pretty good feedback. Why don't you give them a try? So I ran in the 10K up there, and I know I was in 33:30 shape, and I ran 32:45. And I said, wow, these shoes are fantastic. Where do I sign on? And so what they're doing is they've got a carbon plate. So the carbon plate allows you to it sort of springs you onto your forefoot. So you don't use any energy kind of translating from the heel to your toe. And then also they've got this responsive foam that gives you bounce back. It's almost like having springs in the front of your shoe. So you don't get you don't get as tired at the back end of a marathon. And that's why, men and women especially. I mean, the other day, the female ran 28:54 for 10K, and that's a world record now. I remember I ran 28 when I mentioned going to Commonwealth Games at 10K in 86. I ran 28:26 to get in the team. So she'd only be less than 30 seconds behind me in that particular race over 10K on the track. So seen massive progression, and hopefully we're going to see a sub-2-hour marathon in the next couple of years.
There we go. Steve Moneghetti, our Throwback Thursday guest, and we run out of time because we're just going forever. The text line is just lit up. This one, Phil the Dragon. I ran with Steve when he beat me and broke the City to Surf record. The only difference was that I finished an hour behind him, says Phil the Dragon. Thanks for your honesty. Bathurst Bulldog says, Monas, I get that same feeling of peace sitting on the back porch with a beer. Steve, but you do you. Absolute legend and hero. So, you do you, Steve. Bathurst Bulldog. And I reckon you won't change. There's no retirement date. Let's finish on that note, Steve. When it comes to running, you have no retirement date. You will run until you take the day you take your last breath. Is that the plan?
Absolutely. I love what I do, and I've enjoyed the chat. I've got so many stories and friendships that I've made with you, Vossy, people along the journey, and those great stories. Remembering the train and the City to Surf, I couldn't do it without the support and the great friendships I've made along the journey. And hopefully, I will continue to run for as long as I possibly can, because been fortunate to find something that I'm good at, but more importantly, that I love doing. And it's great to be able to share that with so many other people with great stories nowadays.
Inspiration.
That is terrific, Steve. It's been great to have you on as our Throwback Thursday star. And you've been one. You've been a star all your life. Yeah. Good on you. Great to talk.
And it's nice to be, what's my new nickname? Ugly but interesting.
Yeah, ugly but interesting.
Yeah. I thought Andrew could have edited the ugly out. You know,
that's what we read the team. They come in, Steve. You see,
and that was you,
mate.
Bossy. Imagine what my people who don't
exactly.
like
Mate, I get fatty on the thing here, like you and me. Who ate all the pies? I get all of that here, Steve. But it's all true, actually. But by the way, mate, can you just pull it back in check, mate? You've let yourself go 61 kilos. Come on, work a bit harder.
I know. I won't have brekkie.
Okay.
Thanks, Brandy. Thanks, Bossy.
Good on you,
Great
Steve.
to chat, boys.
Steve Moneghetti, our Throwback Thursday guest, and he just sounds as though every time you meet him in person, what you see is what you get with Steve. He always greets you with it. He's always smiling. He's a happy bloke. I love the guy. And
he's a legend.
I know, and he embarrasses me. Every time I speak with him, I say, wow, man, I really want to go out and run. I know I'm not going to, but I hope he's moved you, folks. I hope he's moved you, our guest here on Breakfast with Vossy and Brandy.